Kael Vex had spent the last decade navigating the cold silence of deep space, ferrying cargo between distant colonies where human presence was more of a necessity than a pleasure. The solitude had been his choice at first. Freedom from the politics of station life, from the tangled relationships that always seemed to sour. But time had a way of turning even the most independent souls into something else. The quiet hum of the Starbound's engines had once been a comfort. Now it felt oppressive, an endless void that mirrored his own emptiness. He needed something to break the monotony, something that could share the silence without demanding it be filled. A pet, perhaps. Something intelligent, something that could offer companionship without the complications of human interaction. That was the logic he told himself as he stepped onto the bustling streets of Virelia's exo-quarter. The city stretched before him in a riot of color and movement, neon signs flickering in the perpetual twilight that bathed the district. Virelia was a hub of interstellar trade, a place where species from across the coalition converged, exchanging goods, information, and secrets. The exo-quarter, nestled within the city's lower levels, was a labyrinth of towering structures adorned with alien script, their facades shifting with holographic displays of exotic creatures. Kael moved through the throng, his boots echoing against the rain-slicked pavement, the moisture kept at bay only by the atmospheric shields overhead. His jacket, a relic from his earliest days in the colonies, was damp from the constant mist that permeated the air, but he barely noticed. His attention was drawn to the glowing sign ahead, Galactic Companions, a shop specializing in sentient beings for companionship. The entrance was a seamless archway, flanked by animated projections of creatures that defied classification. Some with translucent wings, others with iridescent scales that shimmered in the dim light. Kael hesitated for a moment, his fingers brushing the cold metal of his belt where his sidearm rested. He wasn't sure what he expected, but the idea of walking into a place where beings were sold unsettled him in a way he couldn't quite explain. Still, he pushed forward, stepping into the dimly lit interior. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of ozone and something unfamiliar. Something alien. The shop was cavernous, rows of enclosures lining the walls, each holding a different species, some recognizable, others entirely foreign. The lighting was low, designed to create an atmosphere of mystery, but Kael's eyes adjusted quickly, scanning the displays for something that might fit his needs. He wasn't looking for anything too demanding, but he also didn't want something that would simply sit in a cage and stare at him. A voice interrupted his thoughts, smooth and melodic, though tinged with something deeper. "Honored traveler, welcome to Galactic Companions. I am Zalari, steward of this establishment. How may I assist you?" Kael turned toward the sound, finding a tall, slender figure with chitinous skin that gleamed in the dim light. The alien's elongated limbs moved with an unsettling grace, its many-eyed gaze fixed on him with something that felt almost predatory. He cleared his throat, trying to ignore the way the shopkeeper's presence seemed to press against his thoughts, as if it could sense his hesitation. "I'm looking for something different," Kael admitted, his voice rougher than he intended. "Something intelligent, but not too complicated." Zalari tilted its head, the gesture eerily human despite its alien physiology. "Ah, a being that can understand you, but not burden you with expectations. We have many suitable candidates." The alien gestured toward a corridor at the back of the shop. "If you would follow me, I believe I have something that will exceed your requirements." Kael hesitated, the weight of his decision pressing against him. He had come here for a pet, a companion to fill the void of his solitude, but something about this place, about Zalara's knowing tone, made him question whether he was walking into something far more complex than he had anticipated. Kael followed Zalari deeper into the shop, passing rows of conventional pets, small, docile creatures curled in their enclosures, their eyes blinking slowly behind reinforced glass. But the alien led him past them, toward a secluded section marked special arrangements. The air here was heavier, charged with an energy that prickled against his skin. The lighting dimmed further, casting long shadows across the polished floor. "This is where we keep our more unique offerings," Zalari murmured, gesturing toward a series of sleek, glass-like partitions. Creatures that form bonds beyond mere ownership. Kael exhaled sharply. I'm not looking for a partner. Zalari's multifaceted eyes gleamed. You are looking for something more than a pet, Captain Vex, and I believe I have just the candidate. He barely had time to process the words before movement caught his eye. From behind one of the partitions, a figure emerged. At first, Kael thought it was human, but the illusion shattered the moment she moved. She was humanoid, yes, but her form was impossibly fluid, her limbs stretching and coiling with unnatural grace. Her skin shimmered with a deep sapphire hue, reflecting the ambient light in shifting patterns. Her hair was dark, almost black, cascading in thick strands that moved as if caught in an unseen current. She wore a simple, form-fitting garment that left little to the imagination, its fabric shifting subtly as she moved. Around her neck, a collar pulsed with a soft, bioluminescent glow, displaying her name in glowing script, Lira. Kael's breath hitched. He had expected something strange, something alien, but not this. Not a being that looked so close to human, yet radiated something entirely other. Lira regarded him with an unreadable expression, her luminous eyes locking onto his. There was intelligence there, undeniable and sharp, but also something else. Something that sent a flicker of unease through his gut. She is highly compatible with humans, Zalari continued smoothly, as if reading his thoughts. Empathic, intuitive. She has chosen this arrangement willingly. Kael frowned. Chosen? Lira finally spoke, her voice lilting and musical. It is the only way I can leave. The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Kael's pulse quicken. He studied her more closely now, noting the tension in her posture, the way her fingers curled slightly as if restraining herself. She wasn't just a pet. She was something else. Something waiting. I need something low maintenance, he muttered, more to himself than the Zalari. Lira's lips curved into the barest hint of a smile. I can be exactly that, if it is what you desire. Kael wasn't sure what he desired. But as he looked into those glowing eyes, he felt the pull of something deeper than mere curiosity. Something that whispered of choices he hadn't yet made, of a path he hadn't realized he was stepping onto. Kael stood in the dimly lit chamber of galactic companions, his gaze locked on Lyra's luminous eyes. There was something unsettlingly familiar about them, like a reflection of his own loneliness, his own weariness from years spent drifting between colonies without anyone to anchor him. And yet, she wasn't human. She was something else entirely, something that existed on the edge of understanding. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. I don't know about this. Zalari's voice was smooth, almost amused. You hesitate, Captain Vex, but your heart has already decided. Kael shot the alien a glare. You can't know that. Zalari's elongated fingers traced the edge of a nearby console. Perhaps not, but I see the way you look at her. You are not here for a pet. You are here for something more. Lira took a step forward, her movements impossibly fluid, like water flowing over stone. You are afraid, she said softly, her voice carrying a strange resonance that sent a shiver through him. Afraid of what this means, of what I mean. Kael swallowed hard. I don't want complications. Her smile was slow, knowing. You already have them. He couldn't argue with that. His life had always been filled with complications. Cargo runs gone wrong, contracts that demanded more than he bargained for, alliances that unraveled the moment they were formed. But this was different. He had come here expecting to walk away with a companion that would simply fill the silence of his ship, not something that could see through him so effortlessly. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the right choice. I'll take her, he said finally, though the words felt heavier than he expected. Zalari inclined its head, satisfied. Then we shall formalize the agreement. The transaction was swift, handled through a digital contract that Kael barely read. He had never been one for fine print, and something told him that Lira's contract was more of a formality than a true binding. The moment the transfer was complete, the collar around her neck pulsed once, the bioluminescent script shifting to reflect his name. Lira tilted her head, studying the change. "Interesting," she murmured. "So, we are bound." Kael hesitated. "Not like that." She stepped closer, her sapphire-hued skin catching the light in hypnotic waves. "Then how?" He wasn't sure. That was the problem. He had spent so long pushing people away, avoiding anything that might tie him down, that he didn't know how to define what was happening between them. He wasn't buying a pet. He wasn't acquiring a servant. And he wasn't taking on a partner, not in the way most humans would understand it. Lira reached out, her fingers brushing against his wrist. The moment her skin met his, a pulse of warmth spread through him, something electric and unfamiliar. His breath hitched. "I can feel your uncertainty," she whispered. "But I also feel your need." Kael clenched his jaw. He didn't want to be predictable, didn't want to be the desperate man who bought companionship out of loneliness. But Lira's touch, the way her presence filled the space around him, made it impossible to deny. He looked into her eyes again, searching for something. Reassurance, maybe. Or a reason to stop this before it went too far. But all he found was a quiet, unwavering certainty. "Let's go," he muttered, turning toward the exit. Lira followed without hesitation, her footsteps silent against the polished floor. As they stepped out into the neon-lit streets of Virelia's exo-quarter, Kael felt the weight of his decision settle over him. He had just taken on something far more complex than he had bargained for. And yet, for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was walking away from something. He felt like he was walking toward it. The Starbound's interior was a stark contrast to the neon-soaked chaos of Virelia's exo-quarter. The ship's corridors were dimly lit, the artificial lighting casting long metallic shadows along the walls. The air was sterile, humming with the faint whir of the ship's AI maintaining the delicate balance of oxygen and pressure. Kael led Lira through the main hallway, his steps steady but his mind racing. She moved with an effortless grace that made him hyper-aware of her presence. Each of her steps was measured, deliberate, yet there was something predatory in the way her limbs coiled and uncoiled as she walked. She wasn't just a companion. She was something else, something waiting. Kael stopped outside his quarters. "This is where you'll stay," he said, the words feeling inadequate. Lira tilted her head, studying the door as if it held some hidden significance. "Your space," she murmured. "Your sanctuary." He exhaled sharply. "Something like that." The door hissed open, revealing the modest interior. A single bunk, a desk cluttered with old mission logs, and a small viewport that overlooked the docking bay. It wasn't much, but it was his. Lira stepped inside, her fingers grazing the edge of the desk. "You live in isolation," she observed, her voice carrying no judgment, only curiosity. Kael leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "I prefer it." She turned to face him, her luminous eyes locking onto his. "Do you?" He hesitated. He had spent years convincing himself that solitude was the only way forward, that companionship always ended in betrayal or loss. But now, standing in the presence of this sapphire-skinned being who had chosen him as much as he had chosen her, he wasn't sure. Lira's expression softened. "You fear what you cannot control." Kael scoffed. "I control everything." She took a step closer, her presence sending a subtle ripple through the air. "You control your ship, your cargo, your schedule, but emotions connection? Those things are not meant to be controlled." He opened his mouth to argue, but the words caught in his throat. She was right. He had spent his life avoiding anything that might pull him into something deeper, something unpredictable. And yet here he was, standing in his quarters with a creature that defied everything he thought he knew. Lira's fingers brushed against his wrist again, the same electric warmth surging through him. You are not alone anymore, Kael Vex. He swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way his pulse quickened at her touch. I don't know what I am doing, he admitted. She smiled, a slow, knowing expression. Neither do I, but perhaps that is the point. For the first time in years, Kael felt something shift. Not fear. Not hesitation. Something deeper. Something like the beginning of trust. The Starbound's AI crackled to life as Kael settled into the pilot's chair. Incoming transmission from Coalition High Command, it announced, its voice devoid of emotion. Lira, now dressed in one of Kael's spare jumpsuits, leaned against the console, her sapphire skin catching the ambient glow of the ship's interface. They're reaching out to you, she asked, her tone laced with intrigue. Kael frowned as the holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern features of a Coalition official. Captain Vex, we have an urgent transport request for you. A diplomatic envoy is stranded on a remote colony, and we require immediate extraction. Kael exhaled sharply. I'm not exactly a diplomatic shuttle service. The official's expression remained unmoved. This is a priority mission. The colony in question is experiencing a containment breach, and the envoy's life is at risk. You're our closest available vessel. Lira's gaze sharpened. What kind of breach? The official hesitated. That information is classified. You will be briefed upon arrival. Kael exchanged a glance with Lira. He had learned to trust his instincts, and something about this mission felt off. He wasn't in the habit of taking classified jobs without knowing the full scope. But Coalition High Command didn't reach out to independent freighters unless something was truly urgent. Fine, he muttered. We'll take it. As the transmission ended, Lyra's fingers traced the edge of the console. You're suspicious, she murmured, her voice carrying a note of amusement. Kael leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temple. I don't like missions that don't give me all the details, and I don't like being the last resort. Lira's smile was knowing. Perhaps this mission is more than it appears. Kael shot her a look. You don't say. The Starbound broke orbit, its engines humming as it adjusted course. The journey to the colony would take several hours, giving Kael time to prepare. He reviewed the mission parameters, but the encrypted files only offered vague coordinates and a list of personnel to be extracted. No details on the breach, no information on what they were walking into. Lira stood beside him, her presence a quiet but grounding force. You are afraid, she observed. Kael scoffed. I'm cautious. There's a difference. She tilted her head. You fear what you do not understand. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I fear that this mission is going to be more than just a simple extraction. Lira's expression darkened slightly. Then we should be ready for anything. Kael nodded, his fingers tightening around the controls. The Starbound surged forward, leaving Virelia's neon sprawl behind and plunging into the vast, uncharted void of space. The Starbound emerged from hyperspace at the colony's edge, its sleek frame cutting through the residual distortion of the jump. Kael adjusted the controls, scanning the external feeds as the ship coasted toward the designated extraction point. The colony, Corvallis 7, was a sprawling complex of domed structures and reinforced outposts, its surface marred by the scars of past conflicts. From orbit, the damage was subtle, craters where automated defenses had once stood, scorched pathways where firefights had left their mark. Lira's gaze was fixed on the viewport, her sapphire-hued skin reflecting the dim glow of the colony's lights. The energy signatures are irregular, she murmured, her fingers dancing over the sensor controls. There is something here that does not belong. Kael frowned, pulling up the data. That's not just irregular. Those readings are off the charts. What the hell is this mission really about? The AI's voice cut through his thoughts. Approaching drop zone. Coordinates confirmed. Kael exhaled sharply, maneuvering the Starbound into a controlled descent. The landing bay was a reinforced platform suspended over a deep ravine, its edges lined with flickering floodlights. As the ship settled into place, the bay doors hissed open, revealing a stark contrast to the sterile corridors of the starbound. The air was thick with the scent of scorched metal and something else, something organic, almost metallic in nature. Lira stepped forward, her posture rigid. "This place is wrong," she whispered, her voice laced with an emotion Kael couldn't place. Before he could respond, the corridor beyond the landing bay erupted in movement. A group of figures emerged from the shadows, their faces obscured by the dim lighting. They weren't the diplomatic envoy. They were armed. Kael barely had time to react before the first shot rang out, striking the floor inches from his boot. He lunged for his sidearm, his mind racing through the implications. "They're not here to be extracted," he muttered. "They're here to stop us." Lyra's expression shifted, her eyes darkening. "They are not human." Kael's grip tightened on his weapon. "Then who the hell are they?" The figures advanced, their movements eerily synchronized, as if guided by a single will. The starbound's AI chimed in again, its tone urgent. "Hostile life forms detected. Unknown classification." Lyra's fingers twitched, and Kael felt a pulse of energy ripple through their connection. "They are not from this world," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They are intruders." Kael's mind reeled. This wasn't just a containment breach, it was an invasion. And somehow, he and Lira had just landed in the middle of it. Kael's instincts kicked in, his fingers tightening around the grip of his sidearm as the armed figures advanced. He had seen his fair share of hostile encounters, but something about this felt different, wrong. They weren't just mercenaries or rogue operatives. They moved with eerie synchronicity, as if responding to some unseen command. Lyra's voice was calm but urgent. "They are not acting alone. There is a presence guiding them." Kael glanced at her, his pulse hammering. "You can sense it?" She nodded, her sapphire-hued skin darkening slightly, a sign of her heightened focus. "They are connected to something beyond this world." Before he could question further, the figures opened fire. Kael ducked behind the landing ramp's edge, returning fire with controlled bursts. The starbound's automated defenses engaged, sending out a brief pulse that sent a shockwave through the corridor, momentarily staggering their attackers. But it wasn't enough. They kept coming. Lira moved beside him, her posture fluid yet poised. "We cannot stay here," she murmured, her voice carrying a strange undercurrent of something Kael couldn't quite place. "They are hurting us." Kael gritted his teeth. "Then we don't let them." He quickly accessed the ship's internal systems, rerouting auxiliary power to the environmental controls. If they were going to make it out of this, they needed an advantage. "I can trigger a controlled pressure release in the corridor," he said, his voice sharp with urgency. "It'll disorient them, give us a chance to break through." Lyra's eyes flickered with approval. "And I can disrupt their connection to whatever is controlling them." Kael hesitated. "You can do that." She gave him a sidelong glance, the barest hint of amusement in her expression. "You are still underestimating me." He exhaled sharply. "Right. Then let's move." As Kael prepared the environmental override, Lira closed her eyes, her fingers twitching slightly. Kael felt the subtle shift in the air, a pulse of energy, something unseen yet tangible. The figures faltered mid-advance, their movements briefly disjointed, as if the invisible thread linking them had been severed. "Now," she said, her voice steady. Kael slammed his hand onto the console. The corridor's pressure system engaged, releasing a sudden burst of ionized gas. The figures recoiled, coughing as the charged mist disrupted their vision. Kael surged forward, his sidearm barking as he moved in tandem with Lira, their steps perfectly aligned despite the chaos. They weren't just fighting side by side. They were anticipating each other's movements. Kael fired precise shots, covering their retreat while Lira manipulated the environment, sending controlled bursts of energy to clear obstacles in their path. It was like they had been doing this for years. As they reached the ship's interior, Kael slammed the control panel to seal the ramp. The AI chimed in. Life signs detected beyond the perimeter. Hostile entities regrouping. Kael turned to Lira, breathless. What the hell are they? Her expression was unreadable. Not what. Who? He narrowed his eyes. Explain. She met his gaze, her voice low and certain. They are puppets, controlled by something more powerful. Kael exhaled sharply. This wasn't just a simple extraction anymore. It was a mission that had just become far more dangerous and far more personal. As the starbound soared through the void, Kael leaned back in his pilot's seat, exhaustion creeping into his bones. The events of the past few hours had left him shaken, not just by the danger they had faced, but by the way Lira had handled it. She wasn't just a companion. She was something else entirely, something that moved with an instinct beyond human comprehension. He glanced at her, finding her already watching him. Her sapphire skin shimmered in the dim cabin light, her expression unreadable. You knew, he said, his voice rough. You knew something was controlling those hostiles. Lira tilted her head, her long dark hair shifting like liquid shadow. I felt it. A presence, a tether. It was not like any mind I have encountered before. Kael exhaled sharply, running a hand through his damp hair. You make it sound like you've encountered plenty. She smiled faintly. I have. He studied her, the weight of her words settling over him. You're not just some exotic pet, are you? Her expression turned serious. I am more than what was presented to you in Galactic Companions, but I did not lie when I said I chose this arrangement. Kael let the silence stretch between them, trying to process the implications. He had spent years avoiding attachments, believing that solitude was the only way to keep himself safe. But Lira wasn't just an attachment. She was a force, a presence that had already changed the course of his mission. And something told him she was only beginning to reveal what she truly was. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his wrist, and the moment her skin met his, a pulse of warmth surged through him. Not just physical, something deeper, something that made his thoughts feel lighter, as if the weight of his doubts had been momentarily lifted. You are afraid of what I am, she murmured. But you are even more afraid of what you feel. Kael's jaw clenched. I don't need a therapist. Lira's smile returned, this time with a knowing edge. No, you need someone who understands. He wanted to argue, to remind himself that he had bought her under a contract that made her his companion, not his equal. But the moment he opened his mouth, she leaned closer, her presence filling the space around him like a tide he couldn't push back against. You do not see me as property, she said softly, her fingers tracing the edge of his collar. And I do not see you as a master. Kael's pulse quickened. He should have felt the need to pull away, to remind himself that he was in control. But the truth was, he wasn't. He had never been in control, not since the moment he walked into Galactic Companions and saw her for the first time. He caught her wrist, but not to push her away. Instead, he held it, feeling the warmth of her presence like a current flowing through him. What are you, Lira? She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. I am what you needed. And that, more than anything, terrified him. The starbound had barely cleared the immediate danger zone when Kael's comms crackled to life again. Captain Vex, the voice of the coalition official, was sharp, unyielding. You have failed to extract the envoy. Explain. Kael's grip tightened on the console. The extraction point was compromised. We were met with hostiles, non-human entities with some kind of psychic tether. He glanced at Lira, who was still scanning the ship's sensor logs. And I don't think this mission was ever about diplomacy. The official's voice hesitated for a fraction of a second, just enough to confirm Kael's suspicions. You are to return immediately for debriefing. Do not deviate from your course. Kael cut the transmission before they could say anything else. He turned to Lira. They're hiding something. She nodded, her eyes dark with concentration. The entity guiding those hostiles was not acting on its own. It was connected to something larger, something deeper. She ran a hand along the console, her sapphire skin reflecting the dim glow of the data stream. There is a reason they sent you on this mission. You were meant to be here. Kael exhaled sharply. Great. So I'm not just a last-minute extraction pilot, I'm bait. Lira's expression didn't change. Perhaps, or perhaps you were meant to find me. He studied her, searching for some sign of deception. But all he found was quiet certainty. You knew this was going to happen. She met his gaze without flinching. I suspected. Kael's frustration flared. You suspected, and you didn't tell me? Her fingers twitched, and Kael felt a ripple of calm wash over him. Her empathic influence, subtle but undeniable. I did not know for certain, but I felt the shift. The moment I was bound to you, something changed. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. You're saying this was inevitable? She tilted her head. I am saying it was necessary. Kael didn't know how to respond to that. He had spent years avoiding anything that felt like fate, like destiny. But Lira was making it clear that he had been pulled into something far beyond his understanding. The Starbound's AI chimed in. Navigational override detected. Unauthorized course deviation in progress. Kael's eyes snapped to the controls. What the hell? Lira's fingers flew over the console, her expression sharp. Someone is trying to reroute us. Kael cursed, slamming his hand onto the manual override. I don't take kindly to people hijacking my ship. Lira's eyes gleamed. Then let's see who is trying to control our path. The AI's voice was unreadable. Tracking source. Signal originating from a deep space relay station. Orionis 9. Kael's stomach twisted. Orionis 9 was decommissioned years ago. It's a dead zone. Lira's gaze was unreadable. Then why is it still transmitting? Kael's pulse pounded. He had been sent on a mission that was never about diplomacy. Now, someone was trying to pull him toward a forgotten relay station with no official presence. He met Lira's gaze. We're not going back to the coalition. She smiled slightly. I hoped you would say that. Kael exhaled, gripping the controls. Then we're going to Orionis 9, and we're going to find out who the hell is pulling the strings. Lira's fingers brushed his wrist, sending a pulse of energy through him. Then let's show them that we are not just pawns in their game. The Starbound veered off course, diving into the unknown. The Starbound emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Orionis relay station's orbit, its sensors immediately detecting a faint but persistent energy signature pulsing from the derelict structure. The station was a skeletal remnant of the Coalition's failed expansion efforts, its outer hull scarred by time and exposure to the void. Most of its docking ports were sealed, their systems long since shut down. But one remained active, its access codes eerily familiar. Kael narrowed his eyes at the console. That's a Coalition encryption pattern, the kind they decommissioned 5 years ago. Lira's fingers ghosted over the sensor readouts. But someone is still using it. Kael exhaled sharply. He had been sent on a mission under false pretenses, and now he was being guided toward a dead station by an unseen force. He didn't like being manipulated. We dock, he decided, and we find out who's pulling the strings. Lira's gaze flickered with approval. Then we should move quickly. This place does not feel abandoned. The docking clamps engaged with a hiss, the Starbound latching onto the station's lone active port. Kael stepped into the airlock, his sidearm holstered but within reach. Lira followed, her posture poised, her presence radiating an unshakable confidence. The moment the inner door slid open, the scent of decay hit him, ozone, rust, and something more primal, something that set his teeth on edge. The corridor beyond was dimly lit, its flickering lights casting long shadows along the walls. The station's AI was offline, its systems sluggish, as if barely holding together. Kael's boots echoed against the metal grating as he moved forward. Lira stepped silent beside him. Then a whisper came. Not through the comms. Not through the air. It was inside his mind, a thread of thought that wasn't his own. You should not be here. Kael froze. Did you hear that? Lira's expression darkened. Yes. The voice returned, stronger this time. You are not the first. Kael's grip tightened on his sidearm. Who the hell are you? A flicker of movement in the corridor. Then a figure stepped into view. Humanoid, but wrong. Its form was wrapped in a tattered exosuit, the metal corroded and cracked. The visor was dark, hiding its face, but Kael could feel its gaze on him. Lira's posture shifted, her sapphire-hued skin darkening slightly. They are not human, she murmured. The figure raised a gloved hand. You are correct. Its voice was distorted, layered with something unnatural. I am Valen, the last guardian of this place. Kael exhaled slowly. Last of what? Valen tilted its head. The Orionis Project was not abandoned. It was silenced. Lira's fingers twitched, her voice low. This station was part of a classified coalition initiative. Kael's stomach twisted. What kind of initiative? Valen took a slow step forward. One that sought to bind human and alien minds through forced synchronization. Kael's breath caught. You're saying this place was an experiment in mind control? Valen's voice was cold. Not control, merging. The coalition believed that by fusing human adaptability with alien cognition, they could create something superior. Something that would obey without question. Kael's mind reeled. And they used people as test subjects. Valen gestured to the corridor behind him. Some survived, most did not. But the ones who did, they are still here. Lira's fingers brushed Kael's wrist, her touch sending a pulse of warmth through him. You feel them, don't you? Kael swallowed hard. He did. Not physically, not through the station's decaying systems, but in the way the air around them seemed to hum, like 1,000 silent voices pressing against the edges of his consciousness. Valen turned slightly. If you proceed, you will find what they left behind. And if you are not careful, you will become part of it too. Kael clenched his jaw. He had come here to uncover the truth. And now, standing in the remnants of a failed experiment, he realized just how much was at stake. He looked at Lira. We keep going. She nodded, her eyes gleaming with something unreadable. We always do. Together, they stepped deeper into the station, into the echoes of a past that refused to stay buried. As Kael and Lira ventured deeper into the decaying corridors of Orionis 9, the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on them. The station felt alive, a remnant of a dark past that echoed through its walls. Each step they took seemed to stir the memories of those who had been lost, and Kael could almost hear their whispers, pleading for release from the shackles of a failed experiment. Do you feel that? Kael asked, his voice barely a whisper. It's like the station itself is reaching out. Lira nodded, her sapphire skin shimmering with an intensity that matched his unease. The remnants of their consciousness linger here, trapped between existence and oblivion. We must be careful, they may not welcome us. A sudden flicker of light illuminated a nearby doorway, casting shadows that danced like specters. Kael felt a chill run down his spine as they approached. What do we do if we find them, if they're still connected? Lyra's expression was resolute. We must sever their ties to this place. We can't let them be used as pawns in someone else's game again. The door slid open with a groan, revealing a chamber filled with remnants of the past, holographic projections of human and alien figures flickering in and out of focus, their faces twisted in expressions of fear and desperation. Kael's heart raced as he stepped inside, the air thick with the scent of decay and loss. Lira, he breathed, his voice catching in his throat. They're suffering. She moved closer, her empathic abilities flaring. I can sense their pain. We must act quickly. Suddenly, a figure materialized in front of them, a twisted amalgamation of human and alien traits, its eyes wide and filled with a mix of confusion and hope. You can help us?" it stammered, voice rasping like dry leaves. Kael stepped forward, his heart pounding. "We can try. What's your name?" "I am Mira," the figure replied, its form flickering like a weak signal. "We were part of the Orionis Project, but we were left behind when the Coalition abandoned us." Lira's gaze softened as she reached out, her fingers brushing against Mira's flickering image. "You are not alone anymore. We will help you escape this place." Mira's eyes widened, a glimmer of hope igniting within them. "But the others, they are still trapped. If you can find them, you can free us all." Kael's resolve solidified. "Then we'll find them. We'll get everyone out." As they delved deeper into the station, they encountered more of the lost, fragments of consciousness that had been tethered to the remnants of the experiment. Each one bore the marks of their past, their forms distorted by the very technology that had been meant to enhance them. With Lira's guidance, they began to weave a plan, a way to sever the psychic links that bound these beings to the station's core. "Once we free them, they can reclaim their identities," Lira explained. "But we must be quick. If the Coalition discovers our presence, they'll send more hostiles to stop us." Kael nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Then we'll be faster." As they navigated through the darkened corridors, Kael couldn't help but feel the shift in his own perception. The isolation he had clung to for so long was beginning to dissolve, replaced by a fierce determination to protect those who had been wronged. Lira's presence was a balm, her empathy a reminder that he was not alone in this mission. In that moment, Kael realized that the journey he had embarked on with Lira was not just about survival or uncovering hidden truths. It was about forging a new path, one where the lines between human and alien blurred, creating a bond that could heal the wounds of the past. The Starbound was no longer just a vessel for cargo. It had become a sanctuary for those who had lost everything. And as Kael looked into Lyra's eyes, he felt a spark of something deeper, something that transcended their differences and united them in purpose. Together they would face the darkness ahead, not just as companions, but as partners in a mission that could change the fate of those trapped within Orionis 9, and perhaps their own. The Starbound drifted above the newly established sanctuary, a shimmering orb of light surrounded by the remnants of the Orionis 9 station. Kael stood at the viewport, his heart racing as he absorbed the scene before him. Lyra, radiant in her sapphire hues, guiding the freed beings toward a new world they had discovered during their mission. The once trapped figures now danced in the void, their forms fluid and unshackled, free from the oppressive grip of the Coalition's failed experiment. "Look at them," Kael murmured, awestruck by the sight. "They're finally free." Lira turned to him, her eyes glimmering with a mix of pride and affection. "And it was all because of you, Kael. You took a risk and it paid off. You have become more than a captain. You are a liberator." He felt a warmth spread through him, not just from her words but from the bond they had forged in the crucible of their shared experiences. "I couldn't have done it without you," he replied, his voice steady. "You opened my eyes to the potential of connection, of empathy. I was just a man adrift in my own thoughts, but now I see the bigger picture." Lira stepped closer, her presence a comforting pulse against his skin. "You have chosen to embrace a new path, one that intertwines our fates. The Coalition will come for us, but we are ready. We have each other." Kael nodded, his resolve hardening. "We'll face whatever comes next together. I've found a new purpose in this journey, and it's not just about survival anymore. It's about building something better for everyone involved." As the ship's AI announced the arrival of the Coalition fleet, Kael and Lira exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. They were not just a captain and his companion. They were a team, a force to be reckoned with. The stars ahead glimmered with promise, and Kael felt a thrill of anticipation course through him. Together, they would navigate the challenges that awaited, not just for themselves, but for the entire universe. The future was uncertain, But with Lira by his side, Kael was ready to face it.